Here we are, back to English for the second time today. We are going to, to try to think about the big picture in Europe, because Europe needs hydrogen more and more, because we need to change the energy system, but this implies that we need to produce more hydrogen, but also this implies to actually import hydrogen as well. And we have the chance here to have two specialists with us, okay, with Ines and Matthias, who are trying to tackle the specific issues relating to hydrogen production and importation, especially relating to regulation issues, to certificate, how we can set up the European framework in order to secure the investors in this process. So first of all, I would like you, Ines, to introduce yourself, who you are and what you're doing, and after that, Matthias will be welcome.
Hello, my name is Ines Boissida. I work at IDRI, the Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations in Paris. We're a think tank that focuses on solutions for sustainable development. I work in the climate program and I focus on energy issues, which is why I've been looking at hydrogen very closely.
Get closer. Matthias?
Yeah, good evening, Paris. It's good to be here. I've traveled from Munich this morning by train, and I'm very happy to be with you. It's probably because of me that we are speaking English this evening, but I hope that's fine for you. I'm working for a company that's located in Munich. It's very small and very strongly specialized on hydrogen. We've been established 40 years ago in 1982 to work on hydrogen as a future energy carrier. And personally, I've started 29 years ago in this company and always working on hydrogen, so I'm absolutely dedicated to the hydrogen topic. And I'm very happy to see that recently, in the last 2 years, really hydrogen has come on the agenda and everybody is preparing the hydrogen economy. So looking forward to discussing this topic here.
Great. So you have a great legitimacy to talk about the subject, and I would like to start with you. Recently, and also due to what's going on on the Eastern Front, the European Commission has started an accelerated process, something like that. It's called Repower EU, in order to accelerate the energy transition system to actually get rid of most of the import from Russia, to say it clear. And they are talking about tripling the usage of hydrogen in our European market. So can you summarize for us what we are talking about here? What are the main issues, challenges that we are facing at the European level?
Wow, that's a very
big question. Sorry for that.
No, we have a lot of challenges on all sides. We have technical challenges, we have market challenges, we have regulatory challenges. But if you look around here in the halls, we have a lot of people that are working to find solutions and to work together. So I think challenges are challenging, but we are here to solve them and to find how to overcome barriers. Now, there's, let's say, the simple picture would be, look at the energy system today. We're consuming nuclear, fossil, and rather little renewable energies for the time being. We are increasing on the renewable front, but we have been rather slow, too slow in my view. So we really need to accelerate. And then if we come to renewables, we see they are fluctuating. The sun is not shining at night. That's very simple, but this is a fact. So, and the wind also doesn't blow every day. So what we need is something to store the energy if we harness it in renewable form and to transport it over long distances. So, and then why should we transport it over long distances? Well, we can supply part of our of our energy needs from our own countries. We can supply energy also from other countries which have better resources and which also need economic development. So both things can go together. And in this sense, the question is, how do we set the regulatory situation and the boundary conditions at European level and then broken down to national level in order to allow that, facilitate, accelerate? And you said a tripling of the targets. That's really, really a very big challenge. And just to look back for 1 second again, my company was established with a view of establishing renewable hydrogen as a solution to long-term energy supply. And that's something that has been discussed for a long time. But the last 2-3 years have seen that we're really going into the direction and going away from fossil energies. And that's the good thing. Now, the other thing is, it really takes very long times to change the energy system. You can't do that in 3 months. Unfortunately, very, very unfortunately, because we have woken up in the last years for climate change, and now the Russian aggression in Ukraine has, especially in Germany, perhaps a bit less so in France because the situation is very different in France energetically, but Germany is very, very dependent on Russian energy. That's gas, that's coal, that's oil, and even nuclear fuel is exported from Russia to Europe. So that's really a challenge, and the regulatory system at European level is something that is also slow. So we have, as a central piece of legislation, the Renewable Energy Directive that was recast in 2018. That was discussed for 2 years, and then it was transposed into national law over the following 2 years. And we're still waiting for the delegated acts, probably to be published next week, which will provide the details on hydrogen requirements.
We're talking about the RED II framework, eh?
Yes, sorry, the RED II, the Renewable Energy Directive, and please interrupt me if I'm talking too much and too long.
Don't worry.
That's really a topic that's important and fundamental. So now we're also discussing at the European Parliament and the Council changes to this one. This will take another year. Transposition again, 2 years. So whatever we see, it's both in the regulation and in the companies and the enterprises that do the projects. It takes a few years at least before we have the situation that we are talking about today. That means, as a final sentence for this part from my side, we need to look into 2030 and 2040 for everything we discussed today.
Yes.
Both in terms of company decisions for investments and in terms of regulation at European and national level.
Okay. So coming back to the national perspective, because every country in Europe has a different stance on the subject, because the energy system is different, because the economic context is different, because the countries surrounding them are different. I would like to have a focus now on France, because you, Ines, with your team, you've been working on the hydrogen subject with the French perspective. So tell us a bit about the work that has been achieved and the study that you recently published.
Yes, I think what's interesting to see in the European case is that you see very different approaches depending on the member state. And France has made it quite clear in its strategy that was published 2 years ago that imports were not a topic. So imports or exports are not a topic, and the long-term goal is to achieve as much as possible energy autonomy. And it's interesting when you see that neighboring countries such as Germany or Belgium are considering imports, and other countries are considering exports such as Portugal and Spain. But I want to take a step back to discuss the imports question.
Yes.
I think the main question is, what do we need hydrogen for? So, because that defines how much hydrogen how much hydrogen we need, how much we want, and whether or not we want to have imports. And I think that question is not settled yet. It's quite clear that hydrogen is key for some sectors in the industry and in mobility, especially air transport and maritime transport. But there are some uses for which it's not yet clear whether or not we want to develop hydrogen, and we need to develop hydrogen for climate neutrality. That being said, the question of imports is moving very fast at the European level right now. You mentioned Repower EU. I think, yeah, this question can be reflected on from different angles. There's an economic angle. Is it economic to import hydrogen from elsewhere? A lot of studies show that it is, of course, under some conditions, because it's not done yet. But there's also a technical issue. I mean, in the next 10 years, because Repower EU is aiming at the next 10 years, the technology to transport hydrogen over long distances that's going to be the cheapest is pipelines. And the cheapest type of hydrogen pipelines is converted natural gas pipelines. And those are mostly pipelines that connect Europe to North Africa. So then it means that in the next 10 years, hydrogen imports would, for a large part, come from North Africa. It would be a good option. And then when you look, like the objective set by the Commission is 10 million tons of hydrogen imports in the next 10 years. That's above 300 terawatt hours of hydrogen, if I'm correct. North Africa right now produces 150 terawatt hours of electricity, and it's not even clean. So I think there's really a reality check to take here. And we really have to reflect on the feasibility of all this and the feasibility of this objective. I'm not saying it's not a good idea. I'm saying we need to think about the conditions for that to happen. The conditions here, technical and economic, but also the conditions there. What does it mean for those countries in terms of techno-economic conditions, but also social conditions, governance? What does it mean for those countries? I think it's a very important point.
Yes, indeed. You did not mention Spain. That's not so far from us, just across the Pyrenees border. There have been some announcements about plans there, and the transport companies like Terega, GRTGaz, and so forth are really considering that as a real potential, at least to get that hydrogen from Spain that is yet to be produced, at least to the north of Europe, where the big consumers are supposed to be, in Benelux or Germany or whatever. Is this something that you have also considered in your researches?
Yeah, of course, it's something that's present in the Spanish strategy for hydrogen. It's something that Spain has had on its mind for a few years now. I think it's an interesting question to be asked. Of course, European cooperation is very key in that process, because, as I said when I started, for now, the strategies are not really coherent. So if you look, for example, at the Portuguese strategy, it discusses the possibility of sending ships to the Netherlands with hydrogen in it. Well, that's an option. There's also the question of, isn't it cheaper to get it through France with pipelines? And I think, yeah, the European level has really a key role to play here, if what we want to do is cross-border exchange of hydrogen.
25 cents per megawatt hour. Well, because in France we have an issue with in Europe, we have an issue with the price of electricity today, which is 75% of the cost of electrolysis production. So can we really consider to be competitive in Europe when producing hydrogen? That still remains a big question. If we cross the border and go to Germany, how do you see that your position within Europe? You have announced in Germany very clearly that you wanted to import, dedicating 2 billion euros to this kind of initiatives. Can you tell us a bit more about the German perspective?
Well, yes, that's a different perspective, but I would like to agree with Ines in saying that this is a very European topic, and we should not think too much in within national borders. Of course, importing hydrogen is not national in this sense, but having national strategies is one thing, but they should be harmonized at European level. We do have different situations in all EU member states, that's clear. But we have a common goal and a common understanding, and I'm very happy about this. But sometimes one can have the impression that this is not really discussed sufficiently at national level, because it's always good to say Brussels is the bad guy and we are doing the good things in Germany or in whichever country. So that's a little bit of a political trap, I feel, and therefore I would like to emphasize it's really important to be European and have European joint strategies and solidarity. And Germany has a different geographic position in Europe. It's much more at the center between east and west, between north and south. So we are in many senses a transit country. We are transiting traffic, we're transiting energy, we're whatever. And then, of course, the energy situation is completely different than in France, because we have decided for electricity that we step out of nuclear energy, and we'll stop the last nuclear power plants in Germany sometime this year. And I think that's undisputed in a sense, because technically speaking, we couldn't prolong them simply, but then we would have to shut them down for 2 years, and then we could restart them. And I think that's not really an option. However, we've been also rather slow in the uptake of renewable energies. We had a very dynamic situation until about 2012, and then it was slowed down politically. And we emphasized imports of gas from Russia, which now very suddenly has turned out to be a mistake, at least to many people. Nonetheless, I would like to stress also that I think all solutions that we are discussing and really trying to establish in order to reduce our dependency on Russian gas, coal and oil is something that helps climate mitigation. And so we are having different challenges and different targets which all point in the same direction. So that's the good thing about the situation. But we are a little bit desperate in Germany really to ensure security of supply in the very short term. And that's a very unfortunate situation. I just said before, it takes years, decades to change an energy system, and it's not possible to change it within 3 months.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we're looking for solutions in the very, very short term, which are sometimes not really good for the climate, looking to prolong or to have more coal-fired power plants being running rather than gas. And the other thing is the current price situation in the energy markets is completely insane.
Yeah, I mean, it is insane.
It
is insane.
That is not a good solution at the moment, and it doesn't help us to look at this as if this would be the long-term situation. What we should look at is really production costs, and renewable energy production costs are so cheap now, a bit more expensive than last year, but very little. So this is really the solution, and that's also the reason, in my view, why hydrogen has taken off so importantly in the last 2 years, because the market has seen that renewables is the cheapest solution. It's in Germany, it's even in Sweden, it's also in North Africa, in the Arab world, in other parts of the world. It's solar and wind energy. That's really the cheapest solution.
Thank you, Matthias. Ines, I would like to conclude with you. With the work that you have done so far, what are the main conclusions that you draw? And do you think there is a way to converge at the European level, a way or another, and when can it happen? Do you have a clue on that, your own perspective on that?
I think one thing that is key that we need to converge on is what do we want to encourage hydrogen for? And I think the answer is some uses in the industry, for steel, for ammonia, for refineries a little bit, and for air and maritime transport. Those are the things that should be consensual. And there are other uses where we could also develop hydrogen. I'm thinking in particular of the power sector. Then there's the issue of infrastructure. If we are going to organize hydrogen import routes, like some member states want to do, we need to agree on criteria. Under what conditions do we want to put money in that?
Yeah.
How do we do that together? I think that's an important part as well. And another thing that I think everyone should agree on, but including at the EU level, but also experts around here, is that hydrogen is fundamentally not a cheap energy vector. I know that might not be a popular idea here, but it is made from electricity, so it is a lot of times more expensive than electricity. And it is more expensive than fossil fuels. That means that the transition, it's not self-evident. We have a lot of work to do. And I think it's a policy challenge. It's quite exciting, but there's a lot of work to do. The next few years, the next decade, and the two decades later will be quite important.
Okay, great. Just to conclude, as we said earlier, we need not to forget that hydrogen is also a way to unlock potential renewable fields that are not exploited today just because there is no local consumer, there is no transport infrastructure for electricity, and then in these places, and especially in the Sun Belt, there is a true potential for actually having cheap hydrogen that with electricity that would not be used if we didn't have electrolyzers linked to them. Okay, thank you very much, Ines and Matthias, for being here. I hope you enjoy your stay and take advantage of the various players representing the French industry here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.